Now we're going to move on just to introduce each candidate. We'll do it alphabetically to start the evening. Each candidate has 3 minutes to introduce their platform, introduce themselves, and explain their vision for the riding as well as how they're going to move Canada forward. The first candidate is David Raymond Amos, who is an independent. So you have 3 minutes. If you could please come to the mic.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good day, folks. I'm back. 2004, I was here. I informed you then that I was a whistleblower about financial crimes. I think you all laughed at me and ignored me, but Rob Moore shouldn't have. He was just a lawyer at the time, and he had received a hard copy of my stuff before the debate. He is not the incumbent this evening, but he expects to be the next parliamentarian for this riding, and history kind of dictates that he will. The reason I'm running this time is to do my best effort to make sure that we have a minority government, just like we got in the 38th Parliament when I first run. The only way I think that we can hold parliamentarians accountable is to have a minority government with a smattering of many parties at the table. I don't respect any of the party leaders, but I think the well-mixed crowd at the circus will have a better shot at having democracy being served. So I'd like to see any number of Bloc, Greens, NDP, People's Party, Mr. Evans' party. I want to see a well-mixed circus at the next 43rd Parliament. And I think if people in Fundy Royal were wise, they'd listen to me closely tonight and put some hard questions to me. Nobody loves me, but everybody loves their money. The stock market's higher than it's ever been. It can fall farther, faster, overnight. And the fella that often is orange under the TV lights, he's in trouble about possible impeachment. Turkey's lining up at Syria tonight. There could be a war and an economic crash. And if you have your pension funds in mutual funds, I strongly suggest you follow the Russians and Chinese. They've been buying gold by the ton for years. Don't worry about the crash, because they'll have to fix it or there'll be riots in the street, but your money will be no good for a while. Please stress test my ethics. Last time I ran for Parliament, I sued the Queen before I ran. That matter's about to go before the Supreme Court. Rob Moore knows why. He's a lawyer. But I've yet to file 3 more lawsuits. I'm going to wait till after the election. I certainly hope that Justin Trudeau does not win a majority mandate. Am I done? 30 seconds. I'm done.
Our next candidate is John Evans from the National Citizens Alliance of Canada.
Good evening all, and thank you all for coming out. My name's John Evans, and I am a retired military and also a retired working in the hospital as a orthotech LPN. I retired in 2011, and since then I have wondered how Canadians are not having a say in our country. We don't have any say in anything. Everything is done in Ottawa, and nobody comes back and says, would you people like this or would you like that? It's all done, and we have no say. I want people to understand that you people are the government, not the people sitting in Ottawa. We are the government, and we should start to take our country back in the manner which we should have it done. Also, I wish to say that we deserve more than what we're getting for our tax dollars. We've had more money taken away from us than we've had handed to us. And when they hand it to us, they say, here you go, here's some money for this and that, and we don't even get a say in saying that's not what we need it for. So Canadians, we have to start to say what we want the money for, and we have to also say that this is our country, our tax money, we should have a say. And that's about it.
Our next candidate, the current Member of Parliament for Fundy Royal, is Elena Locker, Liberal Party of Canada.
Well, good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little shorter than my colleagues. Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the Sussex Chamber of Commerce for all your hard work that went into organizing tonight's event. Certainly has been a lot of work. I'd also like to thank my fellow candidates for coming this evening, and for all of you for taking the time to join us tonight to hear about our vision for the future of Fundy Royal. As many of you know, I'm a longtime resident of Sussex and have served the community in many ways, from my storefront to serving on the Norton Village Council, and also serving in many organizations in this community. In 2015, you put your faith in me to serve as your Member of Parliament for Fundy Royal, and I have done my very best since then to be a strong voice for the people of Fundy Royal in Ottawa. And I believe that the best way to serve the people of Fundy Royal is to show up, to be present, engaged, and approachable in the community. It's by being at community events, having coffee in local shops, and providing opportunities for people to share their ideas. And it's through those exercises that I've been able to identify and act on the local challenges and support opportunities for growth here in Fundy Royal. So at the same time that our government has been focused on righting the ship after 10 years of failed policies, on muzzling scientists, investing in rural communities, returning to fair elections, and taking a leadership role in the world, I've been focused on making sure that the people of Fundy Royal are getting what they need here and have a fair chance of success. Over the last 4 years, we've focused on policies that will help those that need it the most. We've moved away from boutique tax credits that don't help those in lower incomes. And our plan focuses on keeping more money in the pockets of middle-class Canadians and those who really are working hard to try to get there. And also providing Canadians with value for their tax dollars, the services and investments that you need. We've lowered income tax on the middle class and raised it on the top 1%, and our future plan builds on that by increasing the personal basic tax amount to $15,000 per year. And in addition, we introduced the Canada Child Benefit that has had a tremendous impact in our communities. Close to 15,000 children in Fundy Royal are now receiving the benefit through their family, and the average family is receiving $585 in benefits tax-free. By making life more affordable for Canadians, we're seeing our economy expand in a way that benefits everyone and not just the wealthiest. I have to say that I think that things are looking up in Fundy Royal and we're well positioned for growth. And we need to keep working together to make sure that no one gets left behind as we grow. Not our youth, our seniors, those with disabilities, our local business owners, who I see many of tonight. And I hope that you have an opportunity to hear more about our platform this evening. Thank you.
Next up, Rob Moore from the Conservative Party of Canada.
Well, good evening, everybody. First of all, I want to offer my congratulations to everybody that has put their name forward and is at this head table. This afternoon, I got an email from someone from Newfoundland who sent it to all the candidates and said, I just want to thank you for putting your name forward, and we're very pleased that you're taking part in the democratic process. And I know that if elected, you'll do your best for your riding. And I can tell you, we get a lot of emails during the course of a campaign. Not many of them are like that. And I want to echo, I don't know who that person is, but I want to echo what they said and say to each of you that are taking part in the democratic process, a process that too often in Canada we take for granted, I say thank you to each and every one of you. I also want to thank the Chamber this evening for putting this debate together. These debates are important for us to showcase what each candidate and each party is about. And there's a lot of work that goes into these debates, and there's less and less of them taking place in some areas. So thank you to the Sussex Chamber for putting this together. I also want to recognize my friend and colleague, Bruce Northrup, the MLA for this region. Bruce came through an election successfully last year, and thank you for your interest in this, Bruce, as well. I'm running because the people of Fundy Royal, the families here, the seniors, the entrepreneurs, we need to have strong support from Ottawa. We need a government that recognizes and delivers for the people and the communities that are right here. Not everybody lives in Toronto. Not everyone lives in Montreal. We have unique challenges in this riding, and that's why I'm running. It's why I'm proud when I look around the Sussex region and we talk about the Fundy Trail, the Civic Center, the arena, the tennis courts, the mural project, the new playground, all projects that I was pleased to be able to deliver federal funding for. Why? Because I worked hard for the riding, but also because we had a government that recognized that we needed to have programs and policies that support our rural areas like here in Sussex. It's why I'm also pleased to be running on a platform that delivers for individual Canadians and individual residents in Fundy Royal. Making life more affordable, like taking the GST off of home heating oil, by making maternity benefits tax-free, a volunteer firefighter's tax credit, bringing back the children's arts and sports credits that were cut by the Liberals. You know, those were things that were meaningful to families. It helped them make ends meet. And every dollar that we can keep in the pockets of families here in Fundy Royal is a dollar that can be spent here in our community. It's why we introduced the universal child care benefit to provide direct support to families. Thank you all for being here this evening. I look forward to the debate.
Next up is Tim Thompson from the Green Party of Canada.
Hi there, as you said, I'm Tim Thompson from the Green Party of Canada. I want to start with thanking the Chambers of Commerce as well in Sussex for hosting this event, and for the Lions Club for having the facilities here and opening them up to all these people. Thank you all for coming. This is the democratic process, and it's very important that you're participating in it because you are going to choose somebody up here tonight to be your representative on Ottawa. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Quispam-Sis. But I spent lots of time in Sussex with my family. From the time that I could stand, my mother brought me to the Sussex area to Pulley Mountain skiing. I'm sure a lot of you have skied there and have been in a hula hoop yourself as a young child. So I spent a lot of time going down the mountain from the time I could stand. So Sussex is a part of my home as well. I currently live in the Ballal Bay, so I understand the difficulties that Sussex Corner is facing with flooding. I'm also a flood victim for 2 years in a row, so I can connect with you and I understand that. I've done over 13 years in the military as a reservist, and I'm currently employed on base Gagetown, managing facilities and contracts there. Some of the things that we want to bring in as a Green Party to alleviate some of the pressures on you and to help deal with some of the mental health that's going on is the financial burden. So we want to give you universal pharmacare, so cover prescription drugs, universal dental care for the financially needed families. I come from a family of 5 with a single mom, so I can understand those burdens. Watching my mother struggle to pay for dental care and some pharmacare, some pharmacy drugs and things. Free tuition and forgivable national student loans to make sure that every Canadian has access to education, not just the ones that are wealthy. Education should be based on merit and not based on your financial need or your parents' financial need, which is currently the case right now in Canada. We want to take the burden of the climate crisis off of Canadians, off of the consumers, and put it onto large industry. So large industry should be holding that burden and changing how they operate, do business, so that we aren't feeling that ourselves. We have no access to public transit in the area. We need to ensure that that is changing, and we're moving forward with that. So we take that burden. We live in a rural province. We need to ensure that we have access to the same quality of life as other people in Canada. The other thing is the Green Party is going to balance their budget at the same time as the Conservatives. So we'll have a balanced budget by 2024, which is very important, that we're financially responsible and we're managing your money, not my money, well, my money as well, so all of our monies responsibly, making sure that Canadians' money is being spent properly and that we're distributing that wealth and providing it to everybody as much as we can. What we need in Ottawa is a clear, strong voice, someone that's not going to be whipped, someone that doesn't have to toe the party line. And the Green Party is people first, party second. So you'll get that clear voice in Ottawa if you vote Green this election, and you'll get a representation from you. The Conservative Reform Party is the party of the past. The Liberal Party is the party of yesterday. The Green Party of Canada is the party of now and for tomorrow.
And from the NDP, James Dolan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I want to start by saying it's been an exciting few weeks for me, and even though I haven't been able to meet all of you, it's been really exciting to get to know our community, and I'm sure you've seen one of my 7 signs up right now, so thank you so much for letting me be here tonight. I'm really excited to be able to serve this community and hopefully be able to serve this community again in Ottawa over the next few years. This is a really important election, and I think this is something that all young Canadians and seniors and families can appreciate, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. People are worried about the cost of living, housing, phone bills, medicine, and everything adds up for families, and we haven't gotten raises for years. We're facing these serious national issues like climate change and challenges of reconciliation for both the Liberals and the Conservatives that haven't done enough. The Liberals have made big promises in 2015, and the Canadians haven't gotten a real change that they were told was coming. They've disappointed people by not making life more affordable and make decisions that have helped corporations and not the people they were supposed to be representing. At the end of the 4 years of power, young people are still struggling to pay their education and move on into their first homes. As someone who lived in Calgary for years, I know how the struggle is, and that moving to Quispam-Sis has really helped me have my young family and be able to thrive. There are still boil water advisories on reserves, and kids are still growing up in unsafe, uncrowded homes and schools. Mr. Trudeau was even found guilty twice of breaking Canada's conflict of interest laws, the first time that's happened to a prime minister. And we still find we're far away from meeting our Paris climate commitments. The Conservatives offer up the same tired Stephen Harper playbook, and Canadians aren't interested in the cuts and the mean-spirited politics. As a family originally from Ontario, my family still knows what it's like to have Doug Ford and the Conservatives in power. What we want to make sure is that families have the ability to thrive in our communities and not live with the cuts that are coming ahead. The New Democrats are in it for you. We're on the side of working Canadians, not the big corporations and not the lobbyists. We know that Canadians want more affordable life, services like universal pharmacare, and action on big issues like climate change. That's why we're here to bring pharmacare and dental care. That's why we're going to save families over thousands of dollars every year on phone bills and their power bills. That's why we're going to stop profiting off of your young people's student loans and work to make sure the cost isn't a barrier for any bright student that wants to work hard and get an education. That's why we're going to push forward with a bold plan on climate that creates over 300,000 jobs and doesn't leave any commitments behind. That's what we're going to go to Ottawa and fight. And thank you so much for inviting me here tonight.
Thanks to all candidates for their introduction. We will now move on to the questions prepared by the Chamber. And the first question that they prepared was, what will you do to support small business? And we'll start with Rob Moore.
Small business is the economic engine in our region. The vast majority of businesses in New Brunswick are small businesses. And government should do everything it can to encourage small business and entrepreneurship. And what we've seen from this Liberal government is roadblock after roadblock being put in the way for entrepreneurship, for risk takers, for people that we want in our communities creating jobs. And there's no greater example than that, than 2 years ago, when the Liberal government brought in massive tax changes that impacted the small businesses, the professionals, the farmers right here in Fundy Royal. What did those changes mean? Well, it meant that it would be harder for us to have a doctor here in New Brunswick, someone that could go to the U.S. It meant that it would cost more for a farmer to transfer their property to their own children than to sell it to a corporation. It also meant a tax of 73% on investments held in a business. What they didn't change, they also took away the ability for spouses to share in business revenues. What they didn't take away is the ability to split public service pensions. Pensions that politicians get, pensions that public servants get. They maintained the right to split those pensions, but they took away the right for businesses to split their assets. So chief job number one that our Conservative government is going to do is to repeal the terrible changes that the Liberals brought in for small business. We're also going to cut red tape. Red tape is a burden on small business. Many small businesses are owned by one person. There's only a couple of employees. So every hour that they spend filling out forms or complying with red tape is time that's taken away from their principal job, which is running their business. So we've committed to enhancing a one-for-one rule. That means that if government wants to bring in a piece of red tape, they have to remove red tape as well, so that we're constantly keeping an eye on the regulatory burden that our small businesses face. We have a strong track record when it comes to small business. We increased the threshold whereby revenue counts as small business revenue. We lowered the small business tax rate. We froze EI premiums that impact on small business. We did all that to make our small businesses viable and encourage entrepreneurship. We've seen a lot of that undone by the terrible changes that the Liberal government made 2 years ago. And I want to thank the Sussex Chamber, the St. John Chamber, those chambers in Atlantic Canada that stood up and fought, and we were able to push back on some of those changes, but now we need to go the rest of the way and encourage entrepreneurship once again.
Next up, we'll have James Dolan from the NDP. The same question, what will you do to support small business, not only in Fundy Royal, but Canada as a whole?
Thank you. The NDP is in it for you, and we want to be able to support small businesses and help them expand so that we can help all Canadians get what they need. One of the big parts of our platform is the pharmacare and making sure that Canadians are able to be healthy and active at work. So one of those things would be making sure that pharmacare and all our drug platforms, our policies were paid for so that small businesses can save about $600 per employee per year. Every little bit helps. We all know what it's like to have to pinch pennies and look at our budgets. Every little bit helps, even if it's dental care. Having employees not missing days and days and days of work because of illnesses, making sure that Canadians have the access to the help they need and the services they need. We need to stand for Canadians. As Rob even said, with the getting rid of taxes when we're passing down family businesses to our families so that they can stay in the family business. It is a crime that families have to sell off the businesses that they've built over generations because they can't afford to pass it down to their families. We want to make sure we're cutting that tape and ensuring that Canadians are able to stay in their family business. We also want to be able to support infrastructure so rural areas are able to have the access to the internet and phones and different technologies to be able to grow their businesses. Canadians need that fast internet and the ability to continue to do their business, to expand and make sure that they're able to go out and build their their businesses into bigger communities. The biggest thing I want to make sure that all Canadians have is the opportunity to grow. And that's really why I'm here tonight, and that's why I'm here running for Parliament, is to make sure that all businesses and all Canadians have that chance to succeed in life. I think it's important that we need to support our smaller communities so that we're able to build them and become strong with them and not see them fail, especially with small community businesses and family businesses that have been left behind for other opportunities. The other big part of our platform was to make sure that education is paid for and that student loans aren't crippling our communities and our youth so that they can stay and make sure that they thrive in business and make sure that they're promoting their own family businesses. I think it's important that we take the opportunities now to look to our future and make sure that we have everything we need so that our communities are able to grow. Thank you so much.
Next up, John Evans from the National Citizens Alliance of Canada. I'll ask that you try to keep it your answer to the question.
For small business, the people of the NCA and the people of Canada and their strengths and strategies would be a rich idea and have rich ideas and goals to obtain, which are unobtainable with just party and elected ideas. This has been proven over the last 14 years and 41 plus years for the beyond the Conservatives and Liberals that we are talking about today. To create full-time jobs with benefits and then obtain the highest level possible fulfilling economic growth to support economically challenged and vulnerable Canadians. NCA believes in small business. It is the heart of Canada. Less government and lower taxes is what's needed for small business. We reject welfare entitlement of the current federal government. We support fair business playing fields and stay out, and the government stays out of private sectors as much as possible. Support lower business taxation and fair division for large, medium, and small businesses, of support of oil and gas sectors, which is 40% of Canada's export market. Support smart trade over free trade, whatever is best for the Canadian people. Realign vocational schools, technical schools, and universities' qualifications and skills are practical, useful, and versatile. Small business encourages startup. Small business encourage startups as well as funding and training for recipients of unemployment insurance for them to start up small businesses. Tax credits to businesses that hire students under government student programs, to employers who retrain and hire middle-age and senior age workers to reintegrate them into the workforce. A general tax of small business would be 9% or less, because that is where we need to have. Small business have to be going if Canada is going to get going. Without small businesses, we don't have a Canada.
Tim Thompson, Green Party.
Sorry, I'm a bit of a fast talker. I gotta kind of try and slow down a bit. So I think we can all agree that we don't have fair taxation in Canada, whether that's for small business or that's for individuals here. Small businesses need to compete against large corporations. So, I mean, you guys have a Walmart here in Sussex, so your small business need to compete against that large corporation. And so those large corporations have tax loops, and those tax loops and the tax breaks that they're getting are provided to you by the current Liberal and the past Conservative governments. We need to ensure that we close those tax loops and that we ensure that we can stimulate small businesses and medium-sized businesses in Canada. And we can only do that by going and ensuring that they're not able to use these tax loops and get away with doing that. The Green Party of Canada is going to have no increase to small or medium-sized businesses in taxes. We're going to invest in the local economy to keep dollars circulating within the local economy, ensuring it's not crossing borders. So the more money that stays in Sussex and the more money that stays in New Brunswick is better for the economy, better for you, better for small businesses. So we need to ensure that money keeps moving right here in Fundy Royal, right here in New Brunswick, right here at home. One of the largest industries in Fundy Royal is the farming and agricultural business. So the Green Party of Canada is going to restructure Canada's business risk management program to ensure we have focus on disaster relief. So we just had Hurricane Dorian blow through, and in Annapolis Valley, they saw detrimental effects on their crops. So the apple trees, all the apples were blown off. That affects local businesses, that affects small business. We need to ensure that we have a plan to support farmers, to support agriculture within the area, which includes those small businesses, which includes small farms to larger farms. We need to ensure that we're taken care of right here at home. Another thing that the Green Party is going to do is bring in a universal basic income. So that universal basic income will allow for Canadians to start up small businesses, will allow for and stimulate the economy for small and medium-sized businesses by providing Canadians a safety net to fall back on, so that they are able to have part-time workers and seasonal workers, which we depend strongly on in Fundy Royal to have those kind of jobs. And so that those Canadians are making a livable wage and they can afford to put food on their table and they can afford housing. So that's some of the ways that we're going to be investing in small businesses in the local area. We need to take note that farmers in the local area are about to lose 4% or just under 4% of their dairy cattle quota, and from the agreement that we're about to sign with NAFTA. So the Green Party does not support this and will not sign and do not want to ratify this document to ensure that Fundy Royal is represented. So once again, the Green Party actually has an individual voice for you. I'm not whipped, I'm not required to toe the party line. I'll have the voice for you in Ottawa to stand strong and be a loud voice in Ottawa to ensure that small businesses are represented, medium-sized businesses are represented, and we can close those loopholes on large businesses that have been allowed to go on and on and on by the Conservative and the Liberal governments of the past. It's time for change, and the time to change is now.
So next up, David Amos, what would you do to support small business?
Well, there's something I can help you with, whether it's a majority government or a minority government next time. One thing's for sure, is I had a small business in this area. I'm sure lots of you remember me. Some folks made more money, but nobody had more fun than I did. And I know when I was in business, it seemed if it wasn't the government or my suppliers or my employees or my customers, it was a hard job to stay in business, but God, it was fun. If you elected me to Parliament, whether it was a minority or a majority, as an independent, I wouldn't be whipped. And yes, Elizabeth May does whip her people now and then. That said, ACOA exists for a reason, and yet they seem to pass out money to Cooks or the Irvings, and never mind the little fellas. I can marry all three questions into one. Nobody can't deny there isn't a change in the weather, and nobody can't say that we're all getting old and health care and old folks' homes are becoming more and more of an issue every day. Why don't we use ACOA money, and that man used to be a cabinet minister, and finance people that would like to start a Florida North, have gated communities for old folks to retire in around Fundy, set up old farms that are going for seed that people want to do organic farming in, take in a couple of old folks to help them around the farm and take care of them in their old age. All of that money can come small chunks from ACOA. Some of them minor forgivable loans is better than paying unemployment. And if they stiff us, it's a lot easier to take back the farm that we finance than forgive a loan for millions of dollars to Mr. Irving or the Cooks. I think that's what Atlantic Canada Opportunity Agency is for. I know in 2006, when I ran for Parliament, Mr. Irving was mowing down the woods right up to Fundy Park, and Ireland was advertising gated communities, golf courses right next to Fundy Park. And then the economy crashed. That said, we have the prettiest country in the world. We got a lot of lovely people. A lot of ladies are the greatest cooks in the world. We got all kinds of things to offer tourism. I can't think of a better place to retire. Let's use climate change to our advantage. So while Florida goes underwater, let them come north. Let's the weather get better. Why not finance young folks? Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. Next up, our next candidate is Elena Locker from the Liberal Party. And the same question, what will you do to support small business in the area?
Well, thank you. As a previous small business owner, I can tell you that this has been top of mind for me throughout my time as a parliamentarian. In fact, it's my experience as an entrepreneur that has actually caused me the most frustration as a politician, because I was used to making a decision and just seeing it happen, and as you well know, government doesn't work that way. But during the last 4 years, I've used my personal experience to make sure that we did improve the services and support for small businesses. So we lowered taxes for small businesses from 11% to 9%, worked with credit card companies to lower processing fees, cut red tape and remove 450 administrative burdens for small businesses, introduced the Accelerated Capital Cost Initiative to help with business growth, opened up new markets, new countries that are available, their markets for small businesses, and help businesses become more export ready. And most importantly, we put more money in the pockets of the middle class. And where do they spend it? They spend it at their small businesses in their own communities. And we've also, by doing that, broke down the barriers that have helped people return to the workforce. And I can tell you that one of the biggest challenges I hear from small businesses is having a strong workforce. So it's been very important to make sure that we have more people entering back into the workforce to strengthen it. Now, Mr. Moore mentioned the changes to corporate taxations. He referred to it as small businesses. But as I mentioned, we actually lowered taxes for small businesses, and in fact have the lowest tax rate for small business in the G7 at 9%. The taxes that he was referring to are changes to corporate taxations that impacted less than 3% of private corporations in Canada. And those are businesses that would have accumulated more than $1 million in passive investment. So what they would actually now be paying on more than that $1 million of passive investment is tax on the interest. It's not working capital, and it has not impacted the mom and pop shops that we are seeing on Main Street. It really is disingenuous to suggest that we've raised taxes on those small businesses. The measures that we took were to ensure that we had a fair taxation, and that's what we promised Canadians, and that's what Canadians expect. Now, having said that, there's still more work to do for small business, and definitely I will use my time to make sure that we do continue to support small business. One of the things that we can do, and one of the things that I know as a former small business owner, is eliminating the swipe fee on HST and credit card transactions. Those processing fees are a major drain on businesses, and we want to keep working to make sure that we lower those fees. Cutting the fee for federal incorporation by 75%, so that it's only $50 to incorporate a business. And eliminating all fees for BDC, Export Development, and Farm Credit Canada for their advisory services, so that we can make sure that businesses have the services they need to continue to grow. And we also want to automate records of employment. And it might sound small to you, but every minute that you spend doing paperwork when you're in a small business is time that you spend away from growing your small business. Is that time or 30 seconds? That's time. Thank you.
That concludes the first question from the chamber. Our second question is, what is your concern with climate change, and is the carbon tax the right answer? We'll start with James Dolan from the New Democratic Party.
The carbon tax is only part of the answer. We need to make sure that we are looking at different ways to make sure that we are addressing the climate change, and that we are looking at ways that Canadians aren't paying the price. carbon tax right now is a broken system, and we need to make sure that we redirect it so that we are making sure that the right people are paying it. Right now, corporations are finding a way to not have to pay their fair share, and that Canadians are the ones paying the price. We need to make sure that corporations are taxed for their use of our environment, and then making sure that they are not able to continue to pollute it and get away with it. We want to make sure that with our plan that we are not taking the climate over Canadian jobs. We want to ensure that as we move off of our carbon use, that we are continuing to make sure that Canadians have the training to have jobs and to move into the new green sector. We want to make sure that at every chance that the environment is taken seriously, however, not at the expense of Canadian jobs. So we want to make sure that at the end of the day, we are putting in more jobs into the green sector so that Canadians have an opportunity to be trained and move into those jobs so that we're not just leaving them behind at the expense of the carbon taxes. I really should bring my notes up here next time. Keep having them, and then here I am. So I'm sorry if I go off point this time. But we do want to make sure that Canadians are seen first, and we're in it for Canadians. And that's, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're not just going out and putting out plans to make sure that there's nothing being done and that we're just letting corporations off the hook. We want to make sure that those who are the big polluters, not you and me, but those who are putting out tons of emissions, are being taxed so that they are able to pay, and we're able to invest that money back into green energy. We also want to make sure that there's tax breaks for low-emission vehicles, and making sure that low-emission vehicles are actually affordable for Canadians. All too often, you get to see a beautiful new Tesla and wonder how you're able to afford that. We want to make sure that Canadians have the opportunity to have these low-emission vehicles so that we're able to all, again, thrive, and that the average Canadian can do their part in making sure our environment stays healthy. Thank you.
David Amos, can you address the same question, please?
Climate change. It says about carbon tax. I'll tell you this, no amount of taxation is going to make a dent in climate change. I'm not denying that there isn't a change in the weather. Go up north and talk to the fellows that are getting their ATVs stuck where there shouldn't be mud. But the cause of it is open for debate, and I look at a lot of these scientists like actuaries. They'll just tell their client what they want to hear. Meanwhile, Al Gore and David Suzuki live in fine homes and jet around in airplanes. But we need to be concerned about climate change. It's not rocket science to see that there's a change in the weather. I maintain it's Mother Nature going through one of her cycles. We all heard stories about mammoths being froze to death with fresh food in their bellies. There's a lot of things we don't know that Mother Nature does, and any time that we think we know it, we just prove we don't know nothing. But we still have to deal with what's on the table. Now, I too now live in Carr's, Belle Isle, and I know about flooding, etc. But some of the flooding is caused by clear cutting. The woods act as a sponge when it rains. It's not like Arizona. When it rains, you can have flash floods 20 miles away. I know, I've been caught in them while camping. But you take the woods away, it can't absorb the rainfall. And then you have the summer or the spring when the sun comes out and all the snow melts all at once because all the trees are gone to shade the snow so it melts slower. So we have a warm spell and the rain, and downtown Sussex is flooded. That's localized flooding. I don't think it has to do with climate change, more with clear cutting. Mr. Trudeau is going to plant 1 billion trees while the Irvings mow down 1 billion trees. Don't make much sense to me. That said, CO2 is what plants breathe and give us oxygen. But we're ignoring something. The biggest producer of oxygen is in the ocean. These little things, so small, and I don't know the scientific name for them, but, well, whales like to eat them. That's why they're here, because they're all but gone. Big news last Christmas, the guy said they were down to 50%. The ocean gives us our oxygen, and the thing that supplies our oxygen is dying. I don't know how to fix it. I'm not as wise as those guys, but I know as a grandfather, we have to put our best minds together to see how we can deal with what's on the table. Be prepared, like batten down the hatches, whatever it takes. It's going to be hard rain going to fall.
Tim Thompson, the Green Party. If we could please address both climate change as well as your feelings on the carbon tax, that'd be great.
I'll quickly agree with David that the clear cutting is certainly part of the problem of the flooding here in New Brunswick, and that's something we need to look at. Trees do store carbon dioxide, and we need to ensure that we have as many trees as we can. So yeah, I'll break this into two parts, climate and then carbon tax. So the reality is the world is moving off of fossil fuels, whether we like it or not. So whether you agree or I agree, that's the world is transitioning off of fossil fuels. So as Canadians, we have an opportunity to either get ahead of this and lead the world, or we can fall behind. And too often we do fall behind, so it's time that we stand up and we do lead the country and lead the world in transitioning off of fossil fuels. The Canadian economy currently depends strongly on oil and gas, and the Green Party does not deny that. We see that. And we see that we can be responsible with the transition off of fossil fuels, off of oil and gas, into renewable sector to ensure that no Canadian's left behind, not one, and to ensure that industry isn't left behind so we can work with industry, bring them to the table, bring people to the table to transition off of fossil fuels to combat climate change. The Green Party has a long-term plan. It's not a short-term plan. It is a long-term plan to transition off. So we do have a target of 2050. We have targets set between now and 2050 to ensure that we are encompassing that and that nobody is left behind. And so that burden does not fall onto you, does not fall onto me. It needs to fall on industry so that they can make that transition, and that on industry not to discourage them from operating, but discourage them from burning fossil fuels. So they are encouraged to go into the renewable sector. And so we can do that simply by putting targets that are realistic in the future. So 2030 to be off of fossil fuel vehicles, combustion engines stop producing them, not a problem. Industry will catch up. There's already a race now between Ford and Tesla to get a truck off onto the market that is electric. And the minute they do, I'm hopefully be in line to get one if they're affordable. So there is an affordability question, which of course the Green Party is also going to target to ensure that every Canadian can afford an electric vehicle, which by setting those targets will be able to do that. As far as the carbon tax goes, we'll all be honest, that is a Trudeau carbon tax. And that Trudeau carbon tax is brought to you in part by the fact that the province of New Brunswick has failed to provide a plan on an environmental plan. So the previous premier, the Liberal government, failed to bring an environmental plan forward. And then the current Progressive Conservative government also has failed to provide an environmental program that will allow for us to move forward and not put the burden onto the consumer. So the Liberal government decided to put on a carbon tax. They were warned, everyone was provided enough time to do that, and so here we are living with a carbon tax that is taking money directly out of our pockets and not of industry. So we need to change that. We need to ensure that that burden is once again put onto industry and that we are taking that money and investing it back into the local economy.
Elena Locker, Liberal Party of Canada.
Well, Tim, I have to say, you kind of stole my thunder on that. Tim did a great job of explaining, why we need to take action on climate change, and I must say that there are only a few of us that really have a real plan to take action on climate change as far as parties here in Fundy Royal and in Canada, and it's quite disappointing. I've heard it said that, here we are driving towards a brick wall and we're fighting over who's going to sit in the driver's seat. We need to take action. We need to be working together to do this. And the difference between our plans really is feasibility and ambition. Liberal Party of Canada has a very ambitious plan to fight climate change, but it's also one that's feasible and one that really does look at making the investments to make sure that we do transition to that greener economy, that it works in our communities, and that we do make the investments we need so that Canadians can feel that they are making the changes that they need to as well. And there is a cost to doing nothing, and we know that from the flooding and the extreme weather events that we've had in our community. We know that our communities are needing to invest now in climate resiliency, and it's costing us a lot of money. Our Liberal platform builds on the actions that we've taken over the last 4 years to face climate change head-on with an ambitious plan. And we will not only phase out the burning of coal, but we have a plan to reach the goal of net zero emissions by 2050, a plan that will ensure a future for our children. We've already taken 50 concrete actions to combat climate change, including putting a price on pollution, investing in renewable energy, supporting the development of clean tech, supporting communities with a $21 billion green infrastructure fund, and banning single-use plastics. And our platform continues in that vein. But we want to make sure that we're taking actions that impact you by offering a $40,000 interest-free loan for home renovations to increase efficiency and lower your power bills, increase rebates for electric and hybrid vehicles, both new and used, protecting more of our land and our oceans, and like Mr. Amos mentioned, planting 2 billion trees so that we do take common sense approaches to fighting climate change as well. Now, the one thing that I was struggled with during the last floodings the last few years was how much support we were able to give to local people directly. And so what is proposed in our platform is to provide disaster assistance benefits for people. So both your home and your income are covered when disaster strikes. And also a national low-cost flood insurance program that will help people that aren't able to get flood insurance. So in respect to carbon pricing, as Tim said, we have the federal backstop in place right now. We are counting on the province to put forward a credible plan that looks at both emissions from industry as well as us as consumers. And I believe that there is a better Made in New Brunswick plan that will apply here. And the other thing that I want to mention before I finish is that when we're talking about carbon tax, we often forget to mention the climate action rebate that's also included with that to put money back in Canadians' pockets so they can make the investments they need. Thank you.
The next candidate, John Evans from the National Citizens Alliance of Canada.
Before I say this, I'm just wondering how it is that the Liberals and Conservatives keep saying, let's get rid of this carbon and let's work on it and everything else. Yet I go to Salisbury and here's Trudeau with 2 diesel buses going, and then he gets out of those diesel buses, he goes back into those diesel buses, he goes out to the airport and gets in an airplane. I worked in the Air Force for 20 years. And I know that airplanes cause carbon. So what are we going to do? Have battery-operated airplanes, battery-operated buses, battery-operated trucks? We're a large country, and we have to use vehicles to travel. You take your kids to hockey, you take your kids to school. They get old enough, and they start driving to school. We have to find another way to get rid of this craziness and start to do other things other than worry about the buses and everything else. I'm sorry. It just seems crazy. We in the NCA would rescind the carbon tax. We believe that it is a regressive financial burden on Canadians and Canadian families due to this tax. It hurts Canadians' business in relation to foreign competition. Carbon sinks, we believe, in Canada, has Canada almost carbon neutral. Canadians contribute to the global carbon emissions is 1.5% or less. The impact that the government has decided to put on us because we have vehicles, gas in 2016 went up 5 cents a liter. 2018, it went up 0.07 cents a liter. And through the grapevine of the news, I understand it's could go up to 32 cents a liter coming up. The impact on a two-vehicle family is roughly $365 per year. You get a child or young fellow that wants to drive his car, it's going to go up even more. We would implement an efficient and effective regulations that would hold polluters accountable in terms of fines and suspensions prohibiting them from polluting. This pollution may be from not excluding or draining raw sewage into waterways or water bodies, releasing contaminants through stack house into the atmosphere and contaminating water supplies through chemical drilling. Irving rings a bell. Incentives. Thanks very much.
Rob Moore from the Conservative Party will have the final word on climate change and the carbon tax.
Well, thank you. And as we've all knocked on probably thousands of doors in this riding, I can tell you one thing that I haven't heard as I've gone door to door is that people can afford new taxes. And for a bit of a perspective check, Canada represents 1.6% of global emissions. China, 26%. Since 2005, China's emissions have gone up by 64%. So we have three parties that seem intent on driving our economy and jobs off a cliff. And we're not prepared to do that. Unless you came here on a magic carpet, most of us drove here this evening. But thanks to Justin Trudeau's carbon tax, it cost you more to do it. And when you get up tomorrow morning and drive to work, it's going to cost you more. And when you take the kids to hockey, it's going to cost you more. And when you buy groceries, it's going to cost you more. And when you heat your home, that luxury in Canada, a warm home, that's going to cost you more. We do not believe that by taxing Canadians that is the right approach. We have a strong track record, and we have a plan going forward. The Liberal plan doesn't target the biggest emitters. Our plan does. Our plan says that Canadians pay enough tax, and we've committed to ending the carbon tax. Do you think it's fair in New Brunswick that we pay the highest carbon tax in Canada, and our families get the lowest rebate in all of Canada? I don't think that's fair. And that's the so-called Liberal backstop. That is the federal carbon tax, and that's hurting our businesses, that's hurting our families. There's also, people seem to think that, if we could just reduce emissions enough from a business and maybe even shut it down, maybe close it entirely, that those emissions have stopped. But those emissions will be displaced to other areas, places like the United States, like India, like China, that will produce what we're producing here, only not do it at the environmental standards. The highest environmental standards in the world are right here in Canada. What we should be doing is producing product here in Canada. That's why I'm a strong supporter of the West East Pipeline project. I'd like to see that development take place here in Canada, and those jobs stay here in Canada and not go to other parts of the world. And that we be using in our refineries here oil from Canada rather than from Saudi Arabia, for example. So we have very different visions when it comes to this issue. We have a plan that includes tax credits to allow people to make their homes greener. Encourage people, not punish people, for a cleaner environment.
Our second question comes to an end, and the third and final question from the chamber is, what is the most important issue that you think Fundy Royal residents want action on? This question has a little more individualism. Some topics may include prescription drug costs, taxation, development of natural resources, climate change, electoral reform. I'll leave it up to you guys to determine what's most important in your minds for this riding. So the first person is James Dolan.
Bring my notes this time. I get to go first twice. This is exciting. I've knocked on countless doors throughout the riding, and one of the main point I keep hearing is affordability. And even for myself, as a young family with 2 young boys under the age of 3, costs keep going up, and we need to keep finding ways to save money so that we can have a future for our kids. Between housing costs, price of prescriptions, student loans, and childcare, costs keep going up and our wages aren't keeping up. I know one of the things when I first moved and I first had my first child, childcare was something that I couldn't believe so many parents are able to afford. And I know now with my wife currently on mat leave with our second, having a second one join him at daycare is one of the stresses that I currently feel. We want to make sure that we can bring in $10 a day daycare so that families are able to go back to work and have 2 incomes in their house to ensure that their families are able to enjoy the liberties and different experiences and services and programs that Canadian families have been able to enjoy for decades. We want to make sure that we're able to tax, or that we cap taxes on cell phones and different power bills so that Canadians are able to save money and make sure that we're able to have a future for our kids. We also want to make sure that we bring pharmacare in so that Canadians, and especially those in our riding, are able to save money on our prescriptions. I know more and more we have prescriptions that we all need to get through our day-to-day lives, and it adds up even with the little fees that are attached, even if you already have a plan. We want to make sure that no Canadian has to go without those prescriptions that they've been prescribed to ensure that they're able to get better and return to work. We want to make sure that there's also sustainable home retrofits, so that we're again saving Canadians money for up to $900 a year in energy costs. By eliminating interest on student loans, this is one again that resonates with me and several of the people I spoke with door to door. Having to pay interest on your student loans so that you can have a future and build your career is counterintuitive. People every day are trying to save for their own kids to go off to university while still paying for their own university. I know it was just a few years ago that I was able to finally break through my student debt. And I know that that's hard for a lot of Canadians when you again are looking to put some money away for those things to make sure that your kids have the same experience that we did when we grew up, and programs and activities and trips and vacations. But when you're still paying off your own student loans, it's a struggle. And then we want to make sure that we're expanding public dental care so that, again, Canadians have the care that they need. Thank you.
Next up, John Evans. So what is the single thing that Fundy Royal residents are facing that you feel you can change?
The most important thing that I found when knocking on doors throughout Fundy Royal was, I believe there are 2 real problems that they keep asking me or they talk about. And there is the residents of Fundy Royal, it is the inability to have a say in their Canada's direction. They have no say in what's going on. The Canadian people have had 0 say in the wages and the elected take and give themselves, their pensions. These are 2 main big items that I've had asked me. How can you change this, they say. I said, vote me in, we'll change it. The laws that have been put into place without people having any input or vote as to the way the problems are causing the people of Canada, having a vote every 4 years is no say in Canada. The tax money being used at their will and what the elected want it for. Remember, this tax money and the elected is using is not their money and have no right to disperse the funds as they want. This would be called theft in any other level of Canadian society. This is what the people are telling me when I go to the door. The Thai concern is job creation and job classification in Fundy Royal. New Brunswick residents do not want their youth to leave the province. I don't blame them. If I had a son here, I wouldn't want him to leave, or a daughter. They are expected to work low wages and no support from either level of elected. And this is wrong. The government, the elected people, should be given as much support to schools and so forth as much as they can. That's what they're paid for. That's what they're for. They're supposed to be working for us. I hear the people say that there's no adequate schooling facilities for youth to go to school, and then they're expected to work and live on poverty wages. The only two elected parties that have done nothing other than remove policies, and then when the other gets in, they change the policy. It's nothing but a cat and mouse game. It's been for the last 4 years for sure. So, I mean, it's crazy. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Rob Moore.
Well, Fundy Royal is a large and diverse riding with 12 municipalities, many communities, so it's hard to pin down any one issue. But one issue that I do hear spoken of extensively when I go door to door, and I know it's a topic around the Tim Hortons, and it's something that I'll speak about now, is on the issue of affordability. It's why when we were in government, we took measures that made life more affordable for families and for seniors in this riding. It's why for seniors we brought in pension income splitting. And I hear from senior couples many times that saved them $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 per year on their tax. It's why we brought in the universal child care benefit. When the other party said parents would use that for beer and popcorn and they would bring in a national daycare program, we said no, we're going to treat every family the same and we're going to provide direct support to those families. So it's why we brought in the universal child care benefit. It's why we brought in what some people call boutique tax credits. I can tell you the people in Fundy Royal appreciated the children's fitness tax credit, the arts tax credit, and the family tax cut, because to a family that's putting their kids through piano lessons and trying to make ends meet and put them in hockey, trying to do the right things for their family, every dollar counts. It's why we, to support a community like Sussex, brought in the volunteer firefighters tax credit to encourage volunteerism that helps tie our communities together and make our community strong. We've seen a number of those measures eliminated by the Liberal government, and some of them we've committed to reinstating. And we believe strongly that leaving more money in the pockets of Canadians is going to be better for our communities. It's why we're bringing, I do hear that the carbon tax is a big one, and people are sick of leaders telling them to do one thing while they do another. They're sick of having to fill up their car and pay more while Justin Trudeau takes 2 jets on this campaign and the other leaders only have 1. People are tired of that type of thing. They're tired of celebrities telling them what to do, what to think, and how to act while they go and live the life of luxury. So everyday hardworking people, that's why we're going to eliminate the carbon tax. That's why we're cutting the lowest tax rate. That's why for maternity benefits, we're going to make them tax-free. It's why on home heat, whether you heat your home by electricity or wood pellets or oil, it's why we're taking the GST off of home heat. And it's why we're introducing a $20,000 green homes tax credit to help you save money on your home if you put in new windows or a heat pump, to be able to make your home more efficient, but also save you money. And that's our focus is on affordability. Thank you.
David Amos, the same question, please.
Well, the biggest problem in Sussex, or Fundy Royal rather, I'm already helping you with and have been doing so since I last ran for Parliament. Number one issue, number one evil is the love of money. Jesus of Nazareth did pretty good until he upset the money changers' table in the temple, and then they crucified him. And Lord knows they've been trying to do that to me since 2002 when I sued Treasury agents for not collecting taxes. That said, I won those complaints, and the Americans try to take me to Cuba underneath a presidential threat. And all of you people laugh at me like I'm crazy. I'm as crazy as a fox. I can be as crazy as I want to be. How do you explain me having wiretap tapes of the mob and I'm not dead yet? If you don't think I have them, Google David Amos wiretap. It's like listening to episodes of The Soprano. If I'm not afraid of the mob, do you think I'm afraid of anyone or anything? Yeah, my mama. If you don't respect your mother, you're not much of a man. That said, my mama, I got her genes and I tease her. She'll take jokes from me because I'm her problem child and that's the one they love the most. That said, 1 year ago I was clean shaven. Nobody noticed. My mom's 96, lives in Shannix. My sister's a lawyer and a nurse and makes sure she gets best of care. She was the first patient advocate the province of New Brunswick ever had. My brother-in-law's law firm partner is Brian Mosier, the lawyer that helped Peter MacKay stab David Orchard in the back and merge with Mr. Harper's questionable party. My own brother-in-law wouldn't help a man transfer a deed to me because of me, conflict of interest. I hate lawyers. I sue lawyers for fun. I argue attorney generals until they're blue in the face. I'm as mean as a snake, but a fun guy. I don't know if there's a heaven and hell, but if they send me to hell, they'll promote me demon first class. I will torture lawyers for eternity with glee. That said, Bill Clinton said it's the economy, stupid. I agree. I explained in the last election here, Chamber of Commerce, we have $700 million provincial debt. Frank McKenna set up this thing that Blaine Higgs turned over to Vescor. It's managing teachers' pensions, lots of bureaucrats, QP. It's called shared risk. When the economy collapses, and the stock market is like the tide, it goes up, it goes down. This time when it goes down, we won't have to top up the teacher's pension plan, thanks to Mr. Higgs. But what about my mama? She's collecting 2 pensions. My father and her second husband, who was chief electoral officer, mom's 96 and collecting her pensions. They never made any deal like that about shared risk. Yet there's 3 lawsuits been spawned because Mr. Higgs, as finance minister, hired the right actuaries, like a lawyer that worked with Bob Ray, and they said, oh, the pensioners are living too old, shortfall. Well, the shortfall is $70 million. Mr. Sinclair, a New Brunswick highest paid employee, is collecting $1.2 billion. Let's take $14 billion that we have in the pension plan. Do I have to go yet? I've got seconds. Anyway, pay off our debt in full. We'll have all kinds of money for roads, hospitals, and old age pensions, and hang, tar and feather anybody that puts us in debt again. There's no need of this. I hope people ask me questions afterward.
So if I translate that, I think the biggest issue for Mr. Amos is debt, fixing the debt problem. So the next candidate, same question, Tim Thompson, Green Party of Canada.
So I've knocked on a lot of doors all over Fundy Royal, thousands probably, every day I go out. And so the number one issue people are talking about is, how can we get the leaders to stop fighting? That is a good question. We got to stop pointing fingers and start working together. Some of the other things that I'm hearing at the doors is about healthcare, taxes, and of course climate change. I'm not just saying that because I'm the Green guy. I'm really hearing that at the door. So the Green Party does have a comprehensive plan to deal with all of these issues, and it wants and needs all of the parties to work together. We want to bring that together. We want to start a war-type cabinet to bring all the parties to the table so that we can start working together. That's what Canadians want. That's what they expect from their government. Stop this sandbox, like children playing in a sandbox, fighting over the ball. Someone needs to get in there and just give everyone a ball, and let's all just play together. And so that's what we want to do. We also want to have an intergovernmental collaboration with the federal government, provincial government, and the municipalities. We need their voices. We need the province's voices. We need the municipalities' voices so that we are working together to work better. The biggest thing, like I said, is that people have lost faith in the government. They've lost faith in the parties. It seems like we're getting closer and closer to a two-party system in Canada, and we need to start having leadership and leading by example. And so we have a great leader. We talked about aircrafts. Not every politician's leader is flying around the country. Elizabeth May took the train via rail, and when she does fly, she doesn't fly on her private aircraft or two. She's flying in a middle seat on an economy fare ticket where she needs to go. She gets an opportunity to talk to real people like you and me, and she gets an opportunity to lower her carbon footprint and ensure that every Canadian is seeing her doing the right thing and setting the example. We need government leaders, and we need government to set the example for the people so that we can transition into a greener economy. And so some of the things, we talked about a west-east pipeline that brought up. That, unfortunately, has failed over 9 years under your previous government, and it has failed over the 4 years in this government that we just had. So, you know what? I'm not sure who's going to get that through Quebec, but it's not going to be the Conservatives. It's not going to be the Liberals. They both tried to do that. So it's time that we stop this true pipe dream, and we look at other ways of getting our product to market, transitioning off of foreign oil, using Canadian oil until we can transition off of carbon and off of oil, and use our own product and getting it to market. It's not going to be through the pipeline. We need to find alternative way because, like I said, for 14 plus years, the governments that we've had in the past have failed you. They've failed each and every one of us to get that pipeline in. And you know what? We need to find a different way to get that product to market and then transition off of fossil fuels by leading the example, starting with government offices, government vehicles, so that that price of electric vehicles and solar panels is cheaper for you by shifting the supply and demand curve. Thank you.
Elena Locker has the final word on this question.
Well, thank you. And like my colleagues, I too have knocked thousands of doors over the last several months, but also over the last 4 years. And I can tell you that people are talking about different things than they were talking about in 2015. In 2015, we were looking at writing the 10 years of Harper policies and making sure that we set a new direction for our country. And now we're talking about things that are important to people like the environment, healthcare, and making sure that everybody has the supports that they need to succeed in Canada. And in regards to climate change, I think it's very important that we do take a real strong stance and make sure that Canada is a leader in the world on fighting back on climate change. You know, I don't know about the other folks at the table, but I am not willing to look at my daughter and say, I had the opportunity to take action on climate and we didn't do it. We need to do it now. It also is not going to be my line to stand with somebody that has had their home flooded and say to them, sorry, we're not going to do anything now. We're going to wait until China or India take a lead. You know, we don't produce that much pollution anyway here in Canada. It is our responsibility as a G7 country to take a leadership role. We have a plan to do that, one that's feasible, one that is with ambitious goals, and I am very proud that we have a platform that will move forward on that. The other thing that I'm hearing a lot about is healthcare. Canadians want better health care. And over the last 4 years, we've taken measures to improve health care. The last health accord that we negotiated with New Brunswick, we made sure that there was specific money carved out for home care, for seniors, and also for mental health care. But they're still asking for more. And I must tell you, I hear this Throughout the riding, I hear it from all ages. People really don't care which level of government it is. They expect us all to work together and improve our healthcare system. And our platform focuses on that. One of the main things that we know that needs to happen is that people have to have access to a family doctor. So we want to work with provinces. We've budgeted $6 billion to work with the provinces to come up with a recruitment and a retention plan for doctors. The province has moved forward with removing billing numbers, which we think will be a positive measure. However, we need to make sure that we're still having doctors come and set up their practices in rural areas. So we'll be working on that. There's also very good work going on in our communities with local organizations, groups of doctors and other professionals that are working hard to recruit new people, sell them our way of life here, and I think that we can be working directly with them as well. In respect to mental health, it's great that we've put more investments there. It's great as a society that we're moving forward and talking more about mental health. But our Canada Health Act does not have any language around mental health and the standard of care for mental health. So we want to open up that Health Act, take a look at it, make sure there is a standard of care for mental health across Canada. And the third and final thing, and I'll wrap up, will be to bring a plan to the provinces to proceed with a national pharmacare plan to make sure that everyone has a fair chance to get their prescriptions and not have to make difficult decisions between which prescriptions to take or whether or not to purchase prescriptions or put food on the table. So I think those will be monumental changes to healthcare, and I'm very pleased to bring that platform to Canadians.
That concludes our questions from the Sussex Area Chamber of Commerce.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
My mother said we had to leave home. The communists were going to take my father away. If my parents were afraid, they didn't show us. But we would never forget our escape from Vietnam. We were lost.
What was your job in Vietnam?
University professor.
We had no home.
Do you have any family in Canada?
No, sir.
Nobody wanted us.
Welcome to Canada.
Canada chose us.
Canadians open their borders, their homes, and their hearts to more than 100,000 refugees fleeing persecution after the Vietnam War.
We were home.
It was my daughter's birthday. She was blowing out the candles on her cake when we heard coming from the TV. So we stopped and listened, and it helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of my daughter's birthday, because now she gets to keep having them.
Tooth Fairy? No, my dear, I'm the Pill Fairy.
There's a pill fairy?
Well, obviously you need one. What's this?
Those are for my back.
Well, you seem fine now. Let's just get rid of any dangerous leftovers, huh? Think about our fishy friends, huh? Ooh, I gotta go. I'm just gonna bring these back to the drugstore. Just don't make me come back.
The Pill Fairy doesn't exist. Return your meds to the drugstore.
We were born in Canada. We spoke English. On the streets, we weren't welcome. But on the field, we were the Asahi. Vancouver's champions. Everyone cheered for us. Our people had a voice. Then Canada declared war on Japan. They took us from our homes, called us enemies, forced us into camps. But we brought the game with us. baseball helped get us through the internment.
The Vancouver Asahi were among the 22,000 Japanese Canadians interned during the Second World War. The team never played another game.
This is Rogers TV, New Brunswick.
They were just kids from New Brunswick. Never even left the North Shore before. Dad trained them the best he could. But how could they possibly be prepared? This was the biggest operation the world had ever seen. He'd already served in the First World War, earned the right to stay home, raise his children. But how could he send those boys into battle and not be by their side? Many were killed that day. One was my father.
Major Archie McNaughton was 47 when he died on D-Day, the invasion that marked the beginning of the end of the Second World War.
When my legs get stronger, I want to play basketball, volleyball, I want to run. I was sick when I was a little baby. I had meningitis.
Even after they did the amputations, they said that it was likely he would not make it.
To now, you throw him on that bike and off he goes.
My bike helps me get my legs stronger.
Without the war amps, being able to afford his limbs and devices would be difficult.
Thank you for helping me get around.
When you become a Rogers volunteer, it's always an opportunity for everybody to come together and try different things that they've never been able to do before.
What I've learned here is different skills that I thought I would never even be interested in learning.
By being here at Rogers, I can learn all these different things that will help me be stronger.
Working here as a volunteer is a good way to get to know your community. It's a good way to learn how to work as a part of a team.
They're people from our community, so they know and they have a heart for our community to step outside of our comfort zone and do more.
Don't be afraid, because this is where you're going to gain the most valuable experience that you can use in your future.
I encourage everybody to be a volunteer at Rogers TV because not only do you grow professionally, you grow personally as well.
Everybody come along, everybody sing a song, lighten up and carry on. It's a brand new day. Everybody come along, everybody sing a song, lighten up and carry on. It's a brand new day. It's a brand new day.
Your mouth can do a lot of amazing things. And your mouth can save a life.
Hi, I'm Tom Wong. I'm just one of close to 1,000 Canadians in search of a stem cell match. We need your help.
A simple swab is all you need to register on the National Stem Cell Database. You could be the one to save a life. Find the hero in you.
Our ancestors came here from France to build a better life. We lived here happily for generations. Until the British decided they wanted our land. The men were called to a meeting and then imprisoned. They demanded we swear an oath to their king and took everything, regardless.